she screamed through the phone, "You jealous old witch." And the palace hasn't been the same since. The British monarchy has survived wars, scandals, and global scrutiny. But even in an institution accustomed to controversy, the latest royal rupture has sent tremors not just through the palace walls, but across the world. In a stunning development, sources now confirm that Princess and the famously stoic, tradition-bound daughter of Queen Elizabeth II has taken a move so unprecedented, so ruthless, that even her allies in the royal family were left speechless. She personally pushed through and finalized the removal of Meghan Markle's remaining royal title, effectively severing the last symbolic tie between the American Duchess and the House of Windsor. But it's not just the decision that shocked observers, it's Meghan Markle's visceral, volcanic reaction that now has the entire palace in crisis mode. Before we continue, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What happened behind the scenes was never meant to go public, but it did. And what spilled out was a fury so unfiltered, so raw, that even seasoned royal aides reportedly froze mid-call. A palace staffer, whose name is being withheld for security and protocol reasons, leaked the now infamous quote to a journalist. Meghan, on hearing the news, allegedly exploded. "You jealous old witch. You were never relevant. You're just bitter because I outshined them all." That wasn't all. Meghan's voice, angry, tearful, and defiant, reportedly echoed through the phone call as staffers stood stunned. According to one source, she went on, "I gave that family global relevance. Netflix, Time Magazine, Vogue, Oprah, all of it. And this is how they thank me." In that single phone call, royal observers say, two things became clear. Meghan felt utterly betrayed. And Princess and had cemented herself as a force even Meghan could not outmaneuver. But how did we get here? How did Princess, and long considered a behind-the-scenes operator and steadfast supporter of royal tradition, emerge as the woman who finally snapped the last royal thread connecting Meghan Markle to the monarchy? And what does this mean for Prince Harry, already isolated from his family, now watching his wife suffer the ultimate symbolic rejection? This video dives into the storm behind the scream, the long history of tension between Meghan and Princess, and the quiet build-up to this explosive moment, and the seismic consequences that may follow. And make no mistake, this isn't just another chapter in the Sussex drama. This may be the moment that history marks as the definitive end of the royal experiment that began when an American actress walked into the gates of Buckingham Palace. To understand why this matters, we need to rewind. When Meghan Markle first entered the royal arena, her arrival was heralded as a modern fairy tale. A divorced American actress of mixed-race heritage marrying a British prince. This was not just a love story, but a PR opportunity for a monarchy desperate to reinvent itself for a 21st century world. Meghan was beautiful, articulate, and media-savvy. For a time, she was seen as the breath of fresh air the monarchy needed. Headlines celebrated her as a game-changer. Magazine covers hailed her elegance. Commentators called her the next Princess Diana in tone, charisma, and even tragedy. But within the palace, not everyone shared the public's enthusiasm. Behind closed doors, a much different narrative was taking shape. Princess, and whose loyalty to protocol and the crown is almost legendary, reportedly viewed Meghan's behavior as disruptive from the very beginning. According to insiders, and raised quiet concerns about Meghan's unwillingness to follow established norms. She bristled at Meghan's celebrity-first attitude, her tendency to seek press attention independently, and the growing sense that Meghan was treating the monarchy as a personal brand. And often called the hardest-working royal, is known for her no-nonsense attitude. She rides horses, carries out hundreds of engagements per year, and shuns attention. She is everything Meghan wasn't, and in that contrast, some say, was born a quiet but potent animosity. Fast forward to the chaos that followed Harry and Meghan's departure from royal duties. The Oprah interview, the accusations of racism, the Netflix documentaries, the tell-all memoir spare. Each revelation widened the gulf between the Sussexes and the rest of the family. But it also made one thing clear: Meghan was not retreating quietly. She was waging a narrative war. And in his eyes, according to one royal commentator, Meghan's rebellion wasn't just personal, it was an insult to the entire institution. Still, even amid the turmoil, Meghan retained her Duchess title, granted to her upon marriage to Prince Harry. It was one of the few remaining artifacts of her royal identity. And now, with a single act, Princess and has reportedly orchestrated its revocation. What pushed into act now? Palace insiders cite multiple reasons. First, King Charles's ongoing health struggles have created a vacuum, a moment when power dynamics are shifting. And, widely trusted by the late Queen and respected by her brother, reportedly seized this moment to act decisively. According to one source, she told aides, "It's time we restored dignity to the crown. Enough freeloaders." Second, there's the issue of precedent. Recent reports claimed Meghan and Harry were exploring business opportunities that leaned heavily on their royal associations, name, image, and brand. And allowing Meghan to keep a title while turning the monarchy into a monetized identity was intolerable. And finally, there was the growing pressure from within the palace staff. Aides reportedly complained that Meghan's continued use of the Duchess title created confusion, resentment, and symbolic inconsistency. If she's not performing royal duties, why should she benefit from royal status? And, never one to blink in the face of confrontation, made the call. And Meghan's reaction, according to multiple accounts, was volcanic. But perhaps the most shocking part of this story isn't Meghan's outburst. It's the possibility that, and expected it. According to a former palace advisor, and once remarked during a family dinner, "Let her show the world who she really is. Strip away the title, and the mask will fall." That chilling prediction, if true, has now come to life. So, what happens now? Will this move escalate tensions to the point of no return? Will Harry retaliate, either publicly or behind the scenes? And will Meghan use this moment to play victim? Or to launch an even more aggressive campaign against the royals? This isn't just a personal feud between two women. It's a symbol of two visions of royalty clashing, modernity versus tradition, celebrity versus service, narrative versus duty. And caught in the crossfire is a monarchy still trying to define its identity in a world that's increasingly skeptical of inherited power. As we begin this deep dive into the full story behind Princess Anne's move and Meghan Markle's shocking reaction, remember this: the most powerful battles in the royal family are rarely fought with swords or speeches. They are waged in silence, behind palace walls, through quiet decisions that carry thunderous consequences. In this case, that thunder may have been unleashed by a single scream, and echoed by a centuries-old crown deciding once again to protect itself, no matter the cost. Let's now unravel the real story. Before the drama, before the exile, before the Oprah interview and the Netflix contracts and the Ghostrin memoirs, there was a title, a name bestowed not just by marriage but by tradition, history, and power. The Duchess of Sussex. 3 words that once held the promise of unity between a global celebrity and one of the oldest institutions in the world. But what did that title really mean? And why has its removal sent shockwaves through the monarchy and Meghan Markle's public identity? To understand the gravity of Princess Anne's decision to strip Meghan of her remaining royal title, we must rewind to the beginning. Because this isn't simply about etiquette or labels. It's about legacy, branding, and the collision between a centuries-old monarchy and a 21st century media phenomenon. When Meghan Markle married Prince Harry on May 19, 2018, at St. George's Chapel in Windsor, she wasn't just entering a family. She was stepping into an institution older than the country she came from. And with that step came the conferral of a royal title, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. It wasn't simply honorary. It was a public acknowledgement that she was now a working member of the royal family, a symbol of continuity, service, and tradition. The title Duchess of Sussex hadn't been used in over a century. In fact, the last person to hold it was Princess Augusta, the wife of Prince Augustus Frederick, in the early 19th century. Reviving the title for Meghan was a deliberate move. It was meant to evoke grace, history, and a touch of grandeur. It positioned Meghan as a full-fledged royal, despite being a divorced American actress of mixed race, something that even a decade earlier would have been unthinkable in royal circles. But the title wasn't just about the past. For many, it was about the future. The monarchy was desperately in need of a modernization moment. Prince William and Kate Middleton had helped to some degree, but Meghan brought something even more potent. Hollywood polish, global familiarity, and a natural ease with the press. The palace hoped that Meghan and Harry could function as the modern arm of the firm, bridging generations and cultures, and helping the crown remain relevant in a rapidly changing world. The title sealed that intention. It formalized Meghan's place within the royal framework. But it also did something subtler. It branded her. In royal terms, a title isn't just a social position. It's intellectual property. It grants access, prestige, and influence, especially when wielded in a media-savvy era. And Meghan, with her background in entertainment and communications, understood that power more intuitively than most royals ever had. So when Meghan and Harry stepped back from royal duties in early 2020, a moment quickly dubbed Mexit by the British press, they faced a complicated question. What happens to the titles when the roles vanish? After tense negotiations with Queen Elizabeth II and senior aides, the couple agreed to drop the HRH, her/His Royal Highness, styling, meaning they would no longer formally represent the monarchy. But crucially, they were allowed to retain the titles Duke and Duchess of Sussex. It was a compromise, a nod to their connection to the royal family, even as they distanced themselves from its duties and expectations. On the surface, this seemed like a middle ground. But behind the scenes, it caused deep discomfort, especially among senior royals like Princess Anne. While Meghan and Harry no longer worked on behalf of the crown, they continued to use their titles in press releases, promotional materials, and global interviews. To traditionalists like Anne, it was a violation of the sacred bargain. You serve or you step away. You don't get to have it both ways. Over the next few years, as the couple monetized their image through Netflix documentaries, podcast deals, and a lucrative memoir, that discomfort festered into resentment. And, who has long believed in duty over glamour, reportedly viewed their actions as cheapening the meaning of royal service. For her, the title Duchess of Sussex was not a fashion statement or a PR boost. It was a solemn badge of responsibility. What made matters worse was how Meghan's title became a cornerstone of her post-royal brand. In interviews, promotional events, and media coverage, she was consistently introduced as Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. This created confusion among audiences unfamiliar with royal nuances. Was she still a royal? Did she still represent the monarchy? Was the crown quietly endorsing her independent ventures? The palace walked a tightrope. It issued carefully worded clarifications, but avoided direct confrontation. Publicly, they insisted there was no ill will. Privately, the mood was shifting, especially within Anne's circle. But the issue wasn't just one of image or protocol. It was also legal and constitutional. Titles in the royal family are granted by the monarch, usually upon marriage, and revoking them is rare. It has happened before, most notably with Prince Andrew, who was stripped of his HRH styling and military affiliations amid scandal. But even then, the process was fraught with difficulty. For Princess Anne to advocate for the stripping of Meghan's title required immense influence. Though she is not a monarch, she holds enormous sway within the institution due to her lifetime of service and her status as the only daughter of Queen Elizabeth II. According to insiders, it was Anne who pushed the discussion forward, arguing that allowing Meghan to keep the title was undermining the very credibility of the royal family. So what exactly does the removal of the title entail? Legally, it would involve a royal warrant or letters patent issued by the reigning monarch, in this case, King Charles III. Such a move would be ceremonial but significant. It would signal that Meghan is no longer recognized even in symbolic form as a duchess within the United Kingdom. While she could still use Duchess of Sussex as a courtesy abroad, it would carry no weight or recognition in the eyes of the crown. Symbolically, the loss of the title is devastating. Titles are the architecture of royal identity. To strip someone of theirs is not just a procedural change, it's a public condemnation. It says, you are no longer one of us. You are no longer bound to us. You are no longer protected by us. And for Meghan, who has built an entire post-royal persona around her unique hybrid identity, part American icon, part royal survivor, that loss could be catastrophic. It also raises thorny questions about Harry. As the son of the reigning monarch, Harry remains a prince by birthright. But if Meghan loses her title, what happens to their shared identity as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex? Could Harry also be asked, or pressured, to relinquish his ducal title? And what about their children, Archie and Lilibet, who inherited princely titles after Charles ascended the throne? There is a deeper layer to this entire drama. Titles in the royal family are not just internal decorations. They carry meaning on the world stage. In diplomacy, in charity, in international branding, titles carry clout. Meghan's Duchess title opened doors in Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and philanthropic circles. It legitimized her in spaces where celebrity alone might not have been enough. Taking it away isn't just about punishing her. It's about cutting off access, authority, and legitimacy. Some defenders of Meghan argue that this move is vindictive. They claim the monarchy is lashing out at a woman who dared to speak her truth. That stripping her title is a medieval reaction to modern independence. Others argue it's about accountability, that you can't reject the institution and still benefit from its trappings. Whichever side you fall on, the message is clear: the crown is drawing a line. This brings us back to Princess Anne, a woman who has spent 5 decades serving quietly, efficiently, and without scandal. A woman who never sought fame, but now finds herself at the center of a royal reckoning. Her decision to push for the removal of Meghan's title may be the most public assertion of power she has ever made. And whether you view it as brave or brutal, it is undeniably transformative. Because in the royal family, titles are more than just words. They are blood. They are history. They are identity. And when they are taken away, they leave scars. In an institution defined by its obsession with hierarchy, image, and history, few figures within the British royal family have remained as consistently underestimated and simultaneously indispensable as Princess Anne. Known formally as and Princess Royal, she is not just the only daughter of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, but also the most enduring symbol of the monarchy's core value: duty over drama. Where others sought the limelight and remained grounded, where royals of her generation and beyond waded into controversy and steered clear with a steady hand and a hardened expression. And in the current royal maelstrom that includes power struggles, media backstabbing, and Meghan Markle's explosive fall from favor, it was an often overlooked and historically silent who stepped forward to make the most consequential move yet: stripping Meghan Markle of her royal title. This wasn't a spontaneous outburst or an emotional reaction. It was a calculated, institutional decision by someone who knows better than most what the crown stands for and what it cannot afford to become. To understand the magnitude of what Princess Anne just did, we must first understand her. From the moment she was born in 1950 and was raised with the heavy weight of royal duty, but without the prospect of the throne. As the second-born and a daughter, Anne was pushed behind her younger brothers in the line of succession, despite being older than Prince Andrew and Prince Edward. That alone could have sparked bitterness or rebellion in a lesser personality. But Anne accepted it with the kind of stoicism that would come to define her. Her childhood wasn't particularly warm or maternal. Queen Elizabeth II was emotionally reserved, and her father, Prince Philip, ran the family like a naval ship. But what Anne inherited from both parents was an unbreakable work ethic. While Charles was groomed for kingship and forged her own path, one that wouldn't make headlines, but would earn deep institutional respect. By the 1970s and 80s, and had already begun building her reputation as the royal who actually worked. Hundreds of public engagements a year, countless speeches, charity visits, and official events across the Commonwealth. She didn't complain. She didn't publicize. She simply showed up. And that became Anne's defining trait. She showed up. Always. In fact, for years, she quietly outworked every other royal, including her more senior relatives. In some years, she clocked more than 500 public engagements, often crisscrossing the country by car, train, or helicopter in the same day. She never courted press attention. She rarely gave interviews. Her fashion choices were practical, not performative. She viewed the monarchy not as a theater, but as a job, and she did it well. This rigid sense of duty shaped Anne's views of anyone who joined the royal family through marriage, particularly those who failed to grasp the gravity of their new role. It's why, according to insiders, she bristled at the arrival of Meghan Markle from the very beginning. To Anne, the monarchy was never meant to bend to personal branding or public sympathy. It was about service, about continuity, about sacrifice. And from the first moment Meghan entered the royal sphere and sensed a threat, not to herself, but to the institution. Those close to the royal family recall the early signs of friction. One aide remarked that Anne was visibly unimpressed during Meghan's first solo royal appearances. She reportedly raised eyebrows at Meghan's habit of speaking candidly with the press. More tellingly, she expressed disapproval over Meghan's perceived unwillingness to accept royal hierarchy. There is a well-known anecdote from the early days of Meghan's royal integration. During a formal event, Anne was said to have offered advice to Meghan about royal protocol, to which Meghan allegedly responded dismissively. Whether that's apocryphal or not, it cemented the growing perception inside palace walls that Meghan was unwilling to conform, and that Anne, in particular, had taken notice, and never went public. That isn't her style. Unlike Prince Andrew, who became tabloid fodder, or Prince Harry, who aired grievances on global platforms and operates in the shadows of power. She does not speak often, but when she does, her words carry weight. Fast forward to 2024. With King Charles facing ongoing health issues and the monarchy undergoing a subtle power redistribution, his influence has never been more apparent. With Queen Elizabeth gone and Prince William still balancing fatherhood and future kingship, and has stepped into the vacuum, not with bombast, but with precision. It was during this period that Anne allegedly began lobbying privately for the removal of Meghan's royal title. Those close to the situation describe a strategic series of conversations between and key palace decision-makers, including senior courtiers and King Charles himself. The argument she made was rooted not in personal disdain but in institutional survival. According to one leaked account from an aide, and said, "We cannot let the crown be used for commercial benefit by those who no longer serve it." That's not monarchy. That's merchandise. That line captures Anne's worldview in one devastating sentence. For her, the crown is sacred. It is not a platform for social media activism, not a brand to be leveraged for multi-million-dollar deals, and certainly not a costume to be worn at convenience. And Meghan, in Anne's eyes, had crossed the line. The final push reportedly came after a slew of reports revealed Meghan and Harry's new ventures, including children's content, wellness initiatives, and philanthropic events, were still using the Sussex name prominently in marketing. That, coupled with Meghan's continued usage of her Duchess title in promotional interviews, was seen by and as the final straw, and presented her case. She pointed to precedent, she cited public sentiment, and, perhaps most persuasively, she invoked the Queen. "Mother would never have allowed this," she allegedly told Charles. "We must act before the crown becomes meaningless." Charles, already navigating complex royal relationships and political realities, was not eager to add more fuel to the Sussex fire. But Anne was resolute, and her persistence worked. In a matter of weeks, the palace began preparing the internal process to officially revoke Meghan's Duchess title. A move that, while ceremonial on paper, carried enormous symbolic weight. When the decision was finalized and communicated to Meghan via her legal and PR teams, and reportedly made a simple statement to staff, "It's done. Let the crown speak for itself." That calm, measured phrase hides the depth of its impact. Princess Anne didn't need to shout. She didn't need to tweet. She didn't need to sell her side to Netflix or Oprah. Her power didn't come from scandal or spin. It came from decades of earned respect within the royal system, a respect so strong that even Charles listened. And now, for the first time in her life, Anne is being recognized not just as the monarchy's workhorse, but as its silent enforcer. The one who acts when others hesitate. The one who understands the rules, and when they must be broken to protect the larger game. There are few things more dangerous in a fading monarchy than irrelevance. Princess Anne has never been flashy, never been trendy. But she has remained essential. And in this decisive act, removing Meghan Markle's title, she reminded the world that relevance is not about headlines. It's about influence. With the press now catching up to the power she's always quietly wielded, Anne's image is shifting. No longer just the stern, horse-loving royal aunt. She is now the matriarch in waiting, the protector of legacy, the woman who took on the most controversial figure in the monarchy and walked away unscathed. And the question now lingering in every corridor of Buckingham Palace and every royal watcher's living room is this: what else is Anne capable of? In the sprawling, ancient corridors of Windsor Castle, where the past whispers from every stone, some of the most consequential decisions in royal history have been made far from the eyes of the public. They are not announced with fanfare or proclamation. They do not unfold in grand halls with ceremonial flourish. Instead, they begin in hushed tones, in rooms behind locked doors, among a handful of individuals whose power lies not in elected office or public adoration, but in lineage, loyalty, and institutional memory. The decision to strip Meghan Markle of her royal title did not happen overnight. It was the result of a series of discreet meetings, guarded conversations, and internal maneuverings that would make even the sharpest political operatives in Westminster take notes. And it all began where so many royal stories find their roots, within the fortified walls of Windsor Castle. Following Queen Elizabeth II's death and King Charles III's early reign, Windsor had transformed from a ceremonial fortress into the monarchy's unofficial war room. With Buckingham Palace undergoing renovations and Sandringham remaining mostly symbolic, Windsor became the center of power, where modern decisions clashed with centuries of tradition. And it was here, away from public scrutiny, that Princess Anne began quietly asserting her influence. According to sources familiar with palace affairs, the first conversation regarding Meghan's title occurred in late 2024. It began not as a directive, but as a question, a murmured suggestion among senior aides during a closed-door briefing. One advisor allegedly posed the dilemma to Anne: if she no longer serves the crown, why does she continue to wear its identity? Anne, known for her terse responses, reportedly offered only 4 words: because we let her. That remark, while simple, carried explosive implications. For years, the royal family had endured Meghan and Harry's independence. They had allowed the couple to walk away from their duties, to speak publicly about private matters, and to capitalize, knowingly or not, on their royal titles. But Anne's comment revealed the heart of the problem. The crown had enabled it. From that moment, a new strategy began to form. Not an aggressive takedown, but a gradual realignment of royal standards, a reassertion of boundaries long blurred by modern media, public pressure, and internal indecision. The earliest of these meetings included a circle of 6, Princess Anne, a senior private secretary to King Charles, the keeper of the Privy Purse, a high-ranking palace legal advisor, and 2 longtime aides to the Queen before her passing. This group, while unofficial, functioned as an advisory body, a think tank with the singular goal of protecting the crown from erosion in the face of global scrutiny. What they agreed upon was not vengeance. It was preservation. They began compiling a document, not a legal filing, but a dossier of patterns. Instances where Meghan had publicly used the title Duchess of Sussex in non-royal contexts. Examples included podcast appearances, Netflix marketing, press releases, charity launches, and branded merchandise. Each mention, while not illegal, chipped away at the palace's claim that Meghan and Harry were independent of royal life. This dossier was shared in confidence with King Charles. The king, deeply focused on stabilizing the monarchy amid his own health battles, did not immediately act. He was cautious. Emotional overreach had defined past royal missteps. He did not want to be seen as vindictive. But the facts laid before him were damning, not because they exposed corruption or betrayal, but because they illustrated something far more dangerous: confusion. The public didn't know where the crown ended and Meghan's personal brand began. And that, in the view of Princess Anne, was unacceptable. In January 2025, an internal meeting was convened at Windsor Castle, held in the Crimson Drawing Room, a room rarely used for strategy, but intentionally chosen for its privacy and tight security. It included King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and 2 legal officers tasked with reviewing the constitutional implications of title revocation. According to a former aide who spoke under condition of anonymity, the discussion was meticulous, not emotional. They explored 3 options. Do nothing and allow the public to gradually forget the title. Issue a warning through the press, an unofficial leak suggesting that continued use of the title could be frowned upon. Revoke the title formally through letters patent, a legal document signed by the monarch that would remove all use of the Duchess of Sussex designation. And was the only one in the room who advocated openly for the 3rd option. She has violated the spirit of the role, she is reported to have said. She's used the crown like a ladder, and now that she's climbed high enough, she's kicking it down. We cannot reward that. The legal advisors were cautious. Stripping titles is rare, they reminded the group. It hadn't been done since Prince Andrew's scandal. And doing it to Meghan, especially in the current climate, could invite backlash, lawsuits, and political debate. But Anne pressed on. And what ultimately turned the tide was not a legal technicality or a poll, it was silence. When asked how many other members of the family supported the measure, Anne produced a list. On it were informal agreements from 6 royals and 4 senior palace staff who believed the move was not only justified, but necessary. Among them, allegedly, was the Duchess of Edinburgh, formerly Sophie Rhys-Jones, who had grown increasingly frustrated with the double standards afforded to Meghan in the media and within the institution. Still, the decision had to come from the top. In late February 2025, after weeks of deliberation, King Charles convened one final private audience, with Princess Anne alone. No aides, no legal advisors, just brother and sister. What exactly was said in that room remains unknown. But the outcome is now clear. Charles signed an internal directive authorizing the revocation of Meghan Markle's remaining royal title, contingent on a formal review and quiet notification to her legal team. In the days that followed, a ripple of activity spread through palace offices. Documents were prepared. Legal channels were consulted. Aides were briefed to be ready for leaks, public backlash, and media frenzy. But there was one unpredictable factor: Meghan herself. She had not been informed directly. Her representatives were notified in a formal letter sent from the private secretary's office, marked confidential. It included the official language of the revocation and a brief explanation. In accordance with precedent and in the interest of preserving the clarity and integrity of royal identity, the use of the title Duchess of Sussex is hereby rescinded, effective immediately. Meghan's reaction, as we now know, was volcanic. The scream, the insult, the rage. But in the halls of Windsor, the mood was far from chaotic. As one source put it, this wasn't done in anger. It was done in silence, in method, in shadows. For Princess Anne, this moment marked the culmination of years of watching her family's reputation deteriorate in the court of public opinion. And she had waited long enough. No press conference was held. No announcement made on the royal website. No public explanation offered. That, too, was strategic. The palace wanted the world to focus not on the drama of the act, but on the inevitability of it. Because for the royals, perception is reality. And allowing Meghan to continue wearing a title she no longer served was, in their eyes, the equivalent of allowing someone to wear a uniform they had long abandoned. As the final documents were archived and the decision entered into the official royal record, one advisor reportedly turned to and asked, "Do you think she'll fight it?" Anne's response was characteristically dry. She already lost. It was early morning in Montecito when Meghan Markle's phone rang. The sun had just begun to creep over the hills of the Santa Ynez Mountains, casting golden light through the glass walls of her California mansion. Outside, the scene was calm. Birds chirped. The air was still. But inside the home, what began as an ordinary day would soon erupt into a storm of volcanic fury, one that would send tremors from California to Windsor Castle. The call came from an assistant within Meghan and Harry's legal team. A quiet voice, calm but direct. There was no preamble, no unnecessary delay. "We received formal notice this morning from the private secretary's office," the assistant said. "The use of the title Duchess of Sussex has been revoked. It's effective immediately." There was silence. Then came the sound of something crashing, reportedly a ceramic coffee mug Meghan had been holding in her hand. According to a close friend who witnessed the aftermath, her face twisted into something unrecognizable. Not just anger, not just disbelief. It was something primal, something guttural. She didn't say a word for 10 seconds, the friend recalled. And then she exploded. Meghan's response wasn't quiet or controlled. It wasn't the poised, camera-ready persona the world had come to know. What emerged, according to a royal aide who later heard a recording of her shouting during a follow-up call with palace staff, was a searing, furious monologue. "You jealous old witch," she reportedly screamed. "You were never relevant. You just can't stand that I outshined all of you." The recipient of that tirade wasn't indirectly, but a mid-level palace aide caught in the crossfire. The call, intended to confirm receipt of the legal communication, quickly became a high-stakes emotional meltdown. She was shaking. Her voice cracked, but she kept going, said one insider familiar with the contents of the call. She accused the palace of orchestrating a smear campaign. She said this was revenge, that they'd never dared to do this to anyone else. And she made it very personal about it. Meghan's comments were not measured, nor were they legalistic. They were emotional, raw, and scathing. Sources say she shouted about her contributions, how she gave the monarchy its only shot at being relevant in America, how she single-handedly modernized their image, how she was the reason headlines about the royal family had gone global. She kept saying they needed me more than I needed them. Over and over, the aide recalled. It wasn't about the title anymore. It was about the insult, the final rejection. As her voice rose, so did her accusations. She said and always hated her. That had made her feel like an outsider from day one. That had never congratulated her on her pregnancy. That she was never invited to the real family moments, only the staged ones. The call lasted 22 minutes. In those 22 minutes, Meghan Markle went from a woman trying to carve her own path away from royalty to someone fully confronting the cost of that decision. Her world, built partially on the symbolism of the Sussex title, was crumbling. It wasn't just the emotional fallout that struck those listening. It was the realization that Meghan had not expected this at all. She really believed they wouldn't dare, said a member of her team. She thought Charles would cave. that he would never sign off on something that would spark a media firestorm. But the reality hit hard. This wasn't Charles acting alone. This was orchestrated, fueled, and finalized by someone Meghan had long underestimated. The phone call became the stuff of palace legend almost instantly. Though unofficial, recordings and transcribed accounts were passed between staffers, analyzed line by line. Some laughed. Others felt uncomfortable. But almost all of them agreed on one thing. It was a Maskoff moment. She couldn't contain the rage, as senior aides said. And in a way, that confirmed everything and had feared from the beginning. Across the Atlantic, the palace didn't flinch. No statements were made. No retractions issued. No clarifications provided to the press. They let the story tell itself. But for Meghan, the aftermath was swift and personal. Within hours, her legal team began combing through possible responses. Could they challenge the revocation? Was there precedent for reinstatement? Did the palace violate any terms agreed upon during the Sussexes' original exit? The answer, according to royal legal experts, was no. Titles granted by the monarchy can be revoked at the monarch's discretion, provided proper channels are followed. And in this case, all had been done quietly but legally. Meghan had no ground to sue or protest formally. The only weapon she had left was the media. And yet, even her media allies were cautious. Within a day of the news leaking, articles began circulating. Some sympathetic, some harsh, but all fixated on one theme, the scream. The phrase "jealous old witch" began trending on social media. Commentators dissected the alleged insult, speculating whether it had been directed solely at or the monarchy as a whole. Public reaction was divided. To some, Meghan's outrage was justified. They saw a woman stripped of dignity by an archaic institution that had never accepted her. Others viewed it as confirmation that Meghan had always been more invested in the status than the service. Even her closest allies didn't know how to respond. Oprah declined comment. Serena Williams posted an ambiguous quote about grace under pressure before deleting it. Tyler Perry reportedly called to check in, but has remained publicly silent. Inside Meghan's home, though, silence was in short supply. According to those present in the days following the call, Meghan barely slept. She paced. She made calls. She questioned everything. She felt betrayed not just by the palace, but by Harry, one insider said. She kept asking, why didn't he stop this? Why didn't he fight for me? Harry, caught in the middle, was said to be devastated, not just by the act itself, but by its implications. He knew what losing the title meant for Meghan, for their brand, for their children. But he also knew how little power he had left within the royal system. He tried to soothe her, to reason with her, to suggest they focus on what they had built outside the monarchy. But she wasn't listening. She saw this as personal humiliation, said the insider. Not political. Not symbolic. Personal. And in many ways, it was. The title had been her armor, proof that despite the drama, she had once been welcomed, included, honored. Taking it away felt like rewriting the narrative, erasing her from the official story of the monarchy, turning her into an outsider once again. It was a wound far deeper than anyone in the palace had anticipated. And the scream, so visceral, so unapologetically angry, became a symbol of that pain. For the royals, it was confirmation that they had made the right decision. For Meghan, it was the moment she realized the door to royalty wasn't just closed. It was locked, bolted, and guarded by the one woman she had underestimated the most. As the dust settled from Meghan Markle's explosive reaction to the loss of her royal title, a new twist ignited the already scorching headlines. Whispers became murmurs, murmurs became posts, and before long, the entire internet was ablaze with one unconfirmed but universally captivating question. Was there a leaked audio recording of Meghan's furious phone call to the palace? And if so, who leaked it, and why? This new wrinkle in the drama didn't come from an official source. It began, as so many things do in the modern era, as a tweet. A cryptic post from a well-known royal gossip account stated, "Breaking. Meghan Markle's scream at palace aide allegedly caught on tape." Staffers shocked. The phrase, "jealous old witch," isn't a rumor, it's real. Within minutes, the phrase began trending. By the time tabloids across the UK and US picked it up, the story had mutated. Some claimed the entire 20-minute tirade had been recorded. Others said there were only fragments, just a few seconds of Meghan's raised voice, captured accidentally during a video conference that was meant to be off-record. The most sensational outlets even claimed the audio had been offered to media companies for purchase, sparking a bidding war behind the scenes. But what's the truth behind the so-called scream tape? And more importantly, what are the implications if it actually exists? To answer these questions, we need to start with the mechanics. How likely is it that such a call could have been recorded? According to insiders familiar with palace protocols, most phone calls between senior staff and high-profile individuals, especially those involving legal or public affairs, are logged and monitored in some form. While they are not routinely recorded, notes are taken. And in recent years, with the rise of video conferencing apps, there's been increased use of encrypted platforms that automatically store temporary recordings for internal documentation. If Meghan's team was using Zoom, Teams, or even WhatsApp calls, there is a plausible path by which an audio capture, accidental or intentional, could exist. Multiple royal correspondents with decades of experience in the media confirmed that leaks from within the palace are rarely accidental. There is a long history of selective leaking within the royal household, said one veteran royal reporter. Usually it's done to test public reaction before an official decision is made or to draw attention away from more damaging headlines. But this time, the leak wasn't about policy, it was personal. According to a palace aide who requested anonymity, the alleged audio wasn't shared internally as a formal document, but as an informal artifact, passed between staffers, like a scandalous voicemail. Only a few seconds were heard, but they left a lasting impression. She was absolutely livid, said the aide. You can hear her say jealous old witch and never wanted me, but more than the words, it's the tone. It's not performative. It's pure rage. It didn't sound like someone defending themselves. It sounded like someone falling apart. The clip, if it exists, has not been released to the public. No media outlet has officially confirmed its possession. But the suggestion of its existence was enough to dominate headlines for days. Meghan's legal team responded swiftly. In a public statement, her representative said, "The Duchess of Sussex has not been notified of any official recording, nor has any such audio been authenticated. We consider these rumors defamatory, invasive, and damaging to both the Duchess's reputation and her family's privacy." However, the palace remains silent. No denial. No acknowledgement. Just the same stony silence that has defined their strategy in the face of controversy for decades. And that silence was telling. To Meghan's supporters, it was proof that the establishment was weaponizing leaks to punish her. They argued that even if such a recording existed, sharing it, even internally, was a breach of privacy and an unethical escalation of the conflict. They want to humiliate her, said one American political commentator. This isn't about protecting the crown. This is about shaming a woman who dared to speak out. But to her critics, the audio, real or not, was vindication. She revealed her true self, one UK broadcaster said during a panel discussion. It's what Princess Anne warned about from the beginning. That this wasn't a partnership, it was a takeover attempt. And when the titles stopped coming, the mask came off. One of the most explosive aspects of the rumored audio is the internal split it allegedly caused within the royal staff. Some senior aides reportedly wanted the recording destroyed. Others insisted on preserving it as documentation, proof that the palace had been verbally abused. Still others argued for restraint, fearing that releasing the audio would backfire and make Meghan appear persecuted by a monarchy already under criticism for its lack of transparency. Even among Meghan's own allies, the alleged content of the tape raised eyebrows. She has always been passionate, said a former friend. But if that audio is what they say it is, I can't defend that kind of language. Not toward Princess Anne. Not toward anyone, really. The legal ramifications of the audio are murky. Under California law, recording someone without their consent is illegal, unless at least one party to the conversation consents, in which case it becomes a gray area, especially when dealing with cross-border calls. In the UK, the laws are slightly different, but neither nation encourages the public release of private communications without legal clearance. Yet, in the court of public opinion, legality often takes a backseat to virality. Social media flooded with fake versions of the recording. AI-generated clips mimicking Meghan's voice. Edited snippets of other interviews. The truth was buried beneath waves of manipulated audio, but the idea had already taken root. There was a tape. It was real. And it was damning. That belief, regardless of whether it's true, began shaping perceptions. Royal analysts began speculating on the long-term impact. If the public accepts that Meghan reacted this violently to losing her title, does it make it harder for her to portray herself as the rational, modernized alternative to the crown? Or does it, paradoxically, make her more relatable to audiences tired of royal decorum and coldness? She may have lost her temper, one PR strategist said, but she also reminded people that behind all the glamour, she's human. And humans break. Still, damage was done. Whether or not the recording is ever released, its rumored content has now become a permanent part of the Sussex narrative. And unlike a legal document or an interview transcript, an emotional outburst, real or imagined, sticks in the public imagination. More than any interview, more than any tabloid headline, it was the rawness of the scream that changed the conversation. Because if the voice in the recording was truly Meghan's, then it wasn't the crown that destroyed her royal legacy. It was her own fury echoing through a phone line. The rift between Meghan Markle and Princess and didn't appear overnight. It wasn't a single moment of misunderstanding or a fiery confrontation caught on camera. Instead, it was a slow-burning tension, one that built over months and then years, shaped by diverging worldviews, unspoken judgments, and a mounting series of subtle provocations. While much of the public remained focused on the more visible drama between Meghan and other royals, namely Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Prince William, the undercurrent of strain between her and Princess tells a more consequential story, and had always been the royal family's most unshakable figure. She was the no-nonsense daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, shaped by military precision and old-world discipline. Meghan, by contrast, arrived at the gates of royalty with a Hollywood shine and a global following. She was outspoken, socially progressive, and deeply focused on brand identity and storytelling. Wherein preferred work to headlines, Meghan embraced both. Their relationship was not built to thrive. It began with an early encounter that, while seemingly benign, set the tone for what would become a deep-rooted clash. According to sources close to the palace, Meghan's first formal introduction to Princess took place weeks after her engagement to Prince Harry was made public. The meeting was arranged at Clarence House and was intended to serve as both a welcome and a gentle indoctrination into royal expectations. Those present at the meeting recall it as stiff and unusually short. And, never one for small talk or pageantry, reportedly asked Meghan directly, "What do you understand about what we do?" Meghan, perhaps misunderstanding the tone, launched into a discussion about philanthropy, global impact, and the power of storytelling in the modern media age. To Anne, this answer sounded rehearsed, performative. She saw it as fluff, one senior aide recalled, and wanted to hear about protocol, schedule, the hierarchy of engagements. Meghan talked about Netflix-level messaging. This disconnect only deepened during official events. On multiple occasions, Anne and Meghan found themselves attending the same public functions, once in support of Save the Children, another time at a royal reception for female leaders. At each, according to witnesses, and observed Meghan's style of engagement with quiet skepticism. She was all flare cameras, hand-holding, speeches with dramatic pauses, said a palace press officer. And, meanwhile, prefers to shake hands, speak privately, and move on. To her, the job is about humility. Meghan made it about the spotlight. But it wasn't just public appearances. Behind the scenes, there were reports of friction in the way Meghan approached the royal role itself, and had spent decades carving out her place within the monarchy, known as one of the hardest-working royals, often eclipsing her more senior siblings in annual engagements. She did so without fanfare, without leaks, and without sympathy. It was service, not strategy. So when Meghan began, according to insiders, demanding changes to how she and Harry were presented, wanting modernized photos, video coverage, and personal branding, it clashed deeply with Anne's philosophy. She couldn't understand why everything needed to be filmed, one courtier explained, and once said, "If you need a camera to prove you're doing the work, you're doing it for the wrong reasons." That wasn't aimed at Meghan directly, but everyone knew who it was about. Tensions escalated further after Meghan and Harry's wedding in 2018. At a formal family gathering months later, Meghan reportedly brought up the topic of updating royal traditions to better reflect modern family values. According to a guest who overheard the exchange and interjected sharply, saying, "Modernity doesn't replace duty. It complements it. If you're not prepared to serve, don't wear the crown." The room went silent. Meghan reportedly looked stunned. That moment, insiders say, was when the frost between them truly set in. What followed were a series of indirect confrontations, never loud, never public, but deeply consequential. In late 2019, During discussions about how to allocate charitable responsibilities across the royal households, Meghan and Harry proposed a foundation that would allow them greater independence in branding and outreach, and reportedly pushed back. She argued that no member of the royal family should operate outside the collective identity, a palace insider confirmed. She saw the Sussex Foundation model as a breakaway kingdom, not a charitable initiative. Then came the royal exit. When Meghan and Harry announced their decision to step back from royal duties in early 2020 and was not consulted, she found out the same way much of the family did, through an official statement drafted by Harry and Meghan's communications team. According to sources, and was livid. She saw it as cowardly, said a family associate. Her belief is, if you want to leave, say it to our faces. Don't run off and issue a press release like you're firing a manager. From that moment on, and reportedly refused to discuss Meghan in public or private. She never commented on the Oprah interview. She declined to engage when asked about Meghan's charity work in the U.S. She treated the entire subject with the same discipline she applied to her own media relations. Say nothing, give nothing, confirm nothing. But silence, as they say, can speak volumes. While Anne never spoke about Meghan, she began speaking more about the importance of protocol, of duty, of not turning royal titles into personal platforms. During a 2021 engagement, she was asked whether the younger generation had changed the monarchy for the better. Her response was pointed: change is inevitable. But change without respect becomes destruction. It was not lost on royal watchers whom she was referencing. Then came the Queen's death. As the royal family grieved and adjusted to a new monarch, Anne's role expanded behind the scenes. With Charles focused on securing the throne and William adjusting to his new responsibilities, and filled the vacuum, quietly steering internal policies, reviewing traditions, and, as it turns out, advocating for action regarding Meghan's continued use of the Sussex title. The turning point came in 2023, when Meghan began using her Duchess title to promote non-royal projects, including children's books, mental health podcasts, and commercial brand partnerships. And, according to multiple sources, viewed this as the final breach. She told a staffer, "She doesn't serve the crown, but she wears its name. That is unacceptable." And thus, the wheels were set in motion. By the time the revocation of Meghan's title was finalized in early 2025, the timeline of Anne's quiet resistance had already been established. It was a war not of loud declarations, but of pressure, of reputation, of presence. While Meghan played the game on the global stage, and played it in the palace hallways. And in the end, it was Anne's style, stoic, methodical, strategic, that won. The Anne versus Meghan timeline may lack the explosive confrontations of other royal feuds. There were no slaps, no headlines about screaming matches, no scandalous leaked text chains. But its impact has proven even more enduring. Because beneath it all was a battle not just between two women, but between two ideologies. Meghan represents a world of storytelling, brand identity, personal evolution, and global media leverage, and stands for lineage, tradition, silence, and service without spectacle. Only one of those ideologies could survive within the monarchy. And when the dust cleared, the title lay on the ground, revoked, removed, and remembered as the final consequence in a timeline shaped not by one event, but by years of growing shadows. In the wake of the title's revocation and the alleged explosive phone call that followed, Meghan Markle did what she has always done best. She pivoted. She activated a media apparatus so finely tuned that even seasoned public relations experts acknowledge it as one of the most strategic image management operations ever built around a royal outsider. Meghan may have lost her title, but she wasn't about to lose the narrative. From the very beginning of her royal journey, Meghan understood the importance of controlling the story. She had seen how public perception could build or destroy careers in Hollywood. She had lived through the tabloid frenzy during her early acting days, and she knew firsthand how quickly the British media could turn on someone they had just anointed. Unlike many members of the royal family, who were raised under the strict, never complain, never explain doctrine, Meghan operated from a place of proactivity. If she wasn't telling the story, someone else was. And often, they would tell it wrong. After the revocation of her Duchess title, Meghan's public team sprang into action behind the scenes. The playbook was clear. Do not confirm the leak. Do not react emotionally in public. And above all, reframe the moment not as a loss, but as liberation. Her first move was subtle. Within days of the leak, a well-timed article appeared in a major American media outlet sympathetic to Meghan. The article didn't mention the title loss directly, but instead focused on a new era of independence for Meghan and highlighted her upcoming projects: children's wellness initiatives, educational partnerships, and a rumored production deal involving inspirational women's stories. A quote attributed to a close friend of Meghan's read, "This is Meghan stepping into her power, on her own terms, free of old institutions." It was a masterstroke of timing. Rather than letting the world dwell on what had been taken from her, the media machine began guiding the conversation toward what Meghan was creating next. Loss became evolution. Stripping became rebirth. The strategy was elegant: position Meghan not as a woman rejected by the crown, but as a modern feminist icon who had outgrown the trappings of monarchy. Then came the interviews. Not formal sit-downs, but curated conversations with allies, writers, influencers, podcasters, who could weave Meghan's new image into the broader cultural narrative. In these interviews, Meghan didn't need to speak directly about the palace or the title. Instead, she spoke about resilience, self-worth, and finding strength in adversity. One host began a podcast episode by saying, "When the world tries to box you in, you break the box." Meghan Markle didn't lose a title, she shed one. That quote went viral, and Meghan's team ensured it did. It was clipped, shared, reposted by dozens of friendly accounts, some with millions of followers. Hashtags like #OwnYourCrown and #DuchessNoMore trended across Instagram and Twitter. Carefully curated Instagram stories featured photographs of Meghan in everyday clothing, smiling with children, walking through schoolyards, captioned with messages about authenticity and transformation. Meanwhile, Meghan's PR strategists were working on another front: silencing dissent. Legal letters were quietly sent to publications speculating on the alleged leaked audio. The letters did not confirm the tape's existence, but warned against the spread of defamatory and invasive content. That was enough to cause several outlets to pull back. Talk shows that had planned segments on the audio quietly scrapped them. Morning TV hosts softened their language, wary of lawsuits. This wasn't damage control. It was narrative engineering. And it worked. Within 2 weeks of the title scandal breaking, Meghan was being spoken about in the press not as a woman who had been publicly humiliated, but as someone reclaiming her identity outside of outdated hierarchies. For her base, it was a rallying cry. But that wasn't the end of her media strategy. Meghan's most powerful weapon was still in reserve: her own voice. A month after the title incident, she was announced as the keynote speaker at a major women's summit in San Francisco. The theme of the event: redefining power. Her speech, delivered in front of a crowd of 5,000 and broadcast online to millions, didn't reference the royal family once. But every line dripped with subtext. "I have learned," she said at one point, "that true power is not given by titles, or roles, or institutions. True power is what you carry with you when everything else is taken away." The crowd erupted in applause. The moment went viral again. This time on TikTok, where clips were edited to show her quote alongside images of Buckingham Palace and Princess Anne. Younger audiences saw her as a symbol of rebellion against a system they viewed as antiquated and elitist. But not everyone bought the spin. In the UK, particularly among royal commentators and older demographics, the narrative was received with deep skepticism. Meghan's slick media counteroffensive was seen as proof that she had always treated the monarchy as a platform to enhance her brand. One veteran royal reporter remarked, "This wasn't a loss for Meghan. It was a calculated exchange. She traded a title for a talking point." Within palace circles, the mood was mixed. Some staffers expressed grudging admiration for Meghan's strategic prowess. "She's brilliant at controlling the optics," said one insider. "Even when she's on the losing side, she makes it look like a win." Others were less charitable. "She never stopped using the title until it was taken," a senior aide said. "Now suddenly it's a badge of oppression? That's not authenticity, that's marketing." The real question was how long Meghan could sustain the illusion of victory. Without the Duchess title, her appeal to some audiences might weaken. The glamour of being a royal, even in exile, had been part of her mystique. Stripped of that, she now had to rely on substance alone. And substance, while powerful, doesn't always capture the same attention. Still, her media machine pressed forward. New content was in production. A children's animation series was being developed. A possible memoir, this time focused solely on motherhood and purpose, was reportedly being shopped to publishers. Rumors circulated of a docuseries about women who broke systems, with Meghan featured prominently in the final episode. The underlying message in all these projects was clear. Meghan was positioning herself not as a fallen duchess, but as a rising queen of cultural relevance. She may have been pushed out of one institution, but she was building another. And at the center of that new kingdom was her voice, her story, and her carefully cultivated image. Still, in the shadows of the palace, the question lingered: how much of Meghan's narrative was real, and how much was performance? To her supporters, it didn't matter. She was an icon of resilience. A woman who challenged one of the most entrenched institutions in the world and walked away stronger. To her critics, it mattered deeply. They saw her media strategy as hollow. An empire of image without the substance of service. But to Meghan, only one thing mattered: control. And in that, she succeeded. In a moment that royal insiders are calling the most unhinged meltdown since the Diana tapes, Meghan Markle allegedly erupted after learning that Princess Anne had stripped her of her royal title. What followed was a furious tirade, overheard by stunned aides and leaked to the public, leaving the monarchy reeling. Why did it take such a bold step? What exactly did Meghan say? And how did this private decision turn into an international scandal? Stay with us as we uncover the secret meetings, the internal fury, and the historic power move that shattered the silence inside Windsor Castle.